Цей екуменічний соціальний тиждень «Стійкість спільнот. Шлях до зцілення та відновлення країни».
Форум відбувається з ініціативи Інституту екуменічних студій Українського католицького університету у співпраці із фондом Конрада Аденауера в Україні та Євангелічною церквою Німеччини.
Свідчення стійкості в часі війни, реінтеграція громад та ветеранів, українські спільноти за кордоном, переслідування релігійних спільнот на тимчасово окупованих територіях. Ці та інші питання обговорять експерти з України та за кордону.
У рамках міжнародного форуму відбудуться круглі столи, панельні дискусії, семінари, виставки, майстер-класи. Запрошуємо молодь, активних громадян, студентів, освітян, журналістів, представників релігійних та громадських організацій до участі.
Реєстрація та деталі на сайті es.uku.edu.ua. Форум відбудеться у гібридному форматі – наживо та онлайн.
Вітаю всіх учасників.
This session with the words of gratitude. It's really important that we are here together, that it is possible for us to be together. I also would like to express gratitude to all those possible who make it possible for us to be present here to and here I also have Andrei Naha with me, Andrei Berdnyk, who was near Kursk, Alexander, who was also injured and he is undergoing rehabilitation. I would like to express gratitude to all of you, to all the organizers, all the donors, and I think that we all have some people that we are grateful for. I'm really happy to see everyone here, and it's great to see everyone here. It is possible thanks to the support of the speakers that we have and also support of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation and the Evangelical Church of Germany. I'm delighted to start this panel, our discussion, Hospitality of the Christians, Who is My Neighbor? To start this discussion, I would like to introduce our speakers. Today with us we have Roman Nazarenko, the director of the UCU Institute for Religion and Society. We also have Dr. Roman Solovii, the rector of the Eastern European Institute of Theology. And we also have Metropolitan of Poltava and Kremenchuk, OCU Bishop Fedir Bubniuk. There is also a technical announcement that in case there is an air raid alert and we have a threat of Kinjal strikes, we will make a pause and we will have to go to the shelter. We will have a discussion during this panel. That is why I encourage you to ask your questions. I'm going to start this discussion with a question. We have the topic Hospitality of the Christians. That is why my first question would be about the meaning of it, because we do not speak about Christian vehicles or cars. We do not say that all other things are Christian and some of them are not Christian. But what about hospitality? Is hospitality of the Christians different from hospitality of Ukrainians? Because Ukrainians are well known for their hospitality. How does it differ from hospitality of the Christians? That is why I would like to address this question to Dr. Roman Solovii, because I know that you are interested in this theme as well. So probably up to 10 minutes, if you could spell it out for us, the meaning of hospitality of the Christians. Thank you, Eduard. I think that we can start with a general overview of the practice. The phenomenon of hospitality is a notion which was born from in times of old civilizations. The very phenomenon of hospitality meant that at a certain point of human existence, people started realizing that they're not alone in these territories, that they interact and communicate with other people, with other communities, and they are not part of their surroundings. They can speak a different language, they can eat different food, they are different, they lead a different lifestyle, etc. The essence of the phenomenon of hospitality implies that when you meet somebody else who is a stranger to you, to build a connection which mitigates the risk of hostility, especially if the person is drastically different for us. We see this person as a threat to us, and this person, this community could also perceive us as a threat because of ignorance, because of not understanding who we are, what our convictions are, what our practices are. And something that is unknown is something that definitely scares us. We see it as a threat, the source of this threat. That is why in old times this phenomenon appeared. We have a host and we have a stranger and they meet each other. They try to build a rapport to mitigate the risk of animosity and hostility, opening up a vista for a friendly relationship, of turning an enemy into a friend. I think this is where it stems from. We know that it was spread in Middle East, the Hilhamash and Egyptian poems. Also, we know about this phenomenon from the Bible. With regard to the Bible, we can refer to terminology. Xenos from Greek means a guest and means a host, and philoxenia as hospitality is something which combines both of these aspects. In Latin, we have hospitality. A host could mean also somebody who welcomes somebody as somebody who is a guest. In the Bible, in the Old and New Testament, we see the continuation of the practice of hospitality, which implies you treating a guest in a certain manner. There are clearly codified practices of hospitality, especially to speak about the Albanians, representatives of the Caucasian region. There are certain rules that they abide by when they treat a guest, once again, to prevent animosity. If we focus more on Christian hospitality, the biblical understanding, it is about the connection with God, the Testament, also faith in God. And of course, here we can speak about the meeting of Abraham from the book of Genesis. And Abraham meets people that he didn't know before, and he doesn't expect them to ask for shelter, for food. He is the first one to offer it. So he's being proactive, so to say, for the guest not to feel as a burden for the host. And I think that this is important. Another one is that Abraham gives too much food. There is some excessive care. These are strangers. These are the people he doesn't know. He doesn't ask for their name, for their goal, for where they are headed to. He doesn't have any preliminary identification, so to say. All of that can happen afterwards when you already have a gesture of hospitality demonstrated. But the very hospitality doesn't imply identification. So food, safety, protection, care about their future journey. These are key things, and we can clearly see it from this part of the Genesis. In the Old Testament, there are very many other rules explaining the way of treating strangers. And if to think of an example of Israel, the Canaan, also people who also went to Israel and the Old Testament, you can clearly see these practices that the same way as you have other vulnerable categories like widows, orphans. That is why in the Old Testament you can find clear-cut rules about taking care of those people who are strangers to you. In the New Testament, we see the continuation of this biblical tradition when Christ is only one, the host. He invites apostles for supper. He provides food, he does miracles, so he is a host for them. Fundamentally, we understand that Christ as the second representative of Trinity. This is a fundamental theological act of hospitality. Yes, that God allows for somebody else, that he gives space for somebody else, and that of course means that God is a host. But at the same time, he says that he doesn't have a space of his own, that he is a refuge in his own country. He is executed, and then he is buried in somebody else's tomb. That is why this experience of a stranger is a showcase that to some extent we all can be strangers and we could all be hosts and guests, and it is something that we can do both of that. Also, there is another story about Emmaus when Christ goes to them, and then during this act of hospitality he becomes a friend. When he goes to this house, there is supper, he shares bread, then he acts as a host, because we know that this is a Jewish tradition. This is what hosts do, treating guests to bread. These are essential aspects of Christian hospitality. When we all understand that we are guests of Christ, we have a perception of us being hosts on this earth, but it is thanks to God that we can live here. It is God who allowed us. We can see the demonstration of God's hospitality because the sun is shining, we have rain, we have a fertile soil and many other things offered to us. So fundamentally speaking, we are also God's guests. We start feeling this ownership. And the act of hospitality, the practice of hospitality is a constant reminder that we are also guests, all of us. And in God's eyes, all of us are guests in the house of God. This is not about us having something and sharing it with others. It is us sharing hospitality of God, because this is the way he takes care of us and this is the way he acts. And a few more comments about Ukrainian hospitality. Here we can see the difference from the hospitality that I've been talking about. Since late Middle Ages in culture, we can see that hospitality becomes part of etiquette. However, if it is about general hospitality, it is about us inviting our friends and many other things. If we see that somebody is hospitable, it means that there was somebody who gave us food, who did something good for us by inviting us, but we do it for our close ones, not for strangers. In the biblical sense, Christian hospitality is drastically different. It means that you have to accept a person who is so different from you. We know it from Abraham. This is hospitality in a general sense. But what about our readiness to accept people of different culture, different nationality, different religious creed? I think that this is some food for thought for us. Thank you. It was really great. That was a very good example of us seeing how it works, a host and a guest. Thank you for these inspiring words for this panel. When I was at the presentation of a similar project of Protestants and Pentecostals, I thought about that because we speak about Christianity, about fundamental aspects. However, there could be a different approach here. It could be something which is good, on purpose, or we can try to save the person for salvation. It is not hospitality for the sake of hospitality. And that became one of your joint projects that you have implemented together with Taras, who was present here. I know that Taras has been deeply involved in this project. Maybe you could share more about challenges of the Christian hospitality. I will give you a mic. Taras Dyatlik is an expert in theological education, a manager of theology. He was a coordinator of the sociological survey. He's going to tell you in detail about the survey, and also he will share more about the challenges related to the topic. I would like to welcome everyone. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for organization of such events where we can hold a dialogue, where we can definitely have these relations, where we have representatives of different denominations, different interface groups. We have scholar leaders, Master Global. There are different organizations which help with theological education in Ukraine, in Eastern Europe. We are carrying out a survey about the impact of war on Ukrainian society, on churches, and there are 3 key questions that we are researching. This is theology of citizenship or nationhood. That could be a challenge for Protestants because it is a challenge for us, have to be a citizen and have to be a parishioner of an evangelical church. This is a challenge. Also, this is theology of disability with reference to different inclusivity aspects, well, physical, mental disabilities, also related to war. And the third one is theology of hospitality, what Roman Pavlovich has brought up. To develop hospitality of theology, we also can see an example of our seminaries. These are 10 seminaries. There is one Christian university in Moldova who provided shelter for refugees. During one of the meetings, we heard some numbers, but these are hundreds of thousands of people who benefit from this cooperation in our partnership with the Biblical Society. More than 1 million of Bibles were distributed, but that was not done forcefully. That was a request from people. It is not something that was provided for them in exchange for food or shelter. There were many campuses of seminaries. There were some people who stayed for 12 months, 18 months. Lviv Theological Seminary also took care of many persons with disabilities. Stanislav Stepanchenko is present here, who was coordinating the activities of the hub. That is why the issue of hospitality is really important to us, because we try to understand what is happening. And now we have classes online, we have classes in corridors of our institution, because the space is used to provide shelter and support to people. As based on our experience, together with the initiative Dialogue in Action, we decided to combine this survey with a religious coping project, which covers several parts of Ukraine and 3 regions of Poland where we have many Ukrainian refugees. The question is about effective overcoming of communicative and psychological barriers for integration of internally displaced person. It is about the responsibility of local church. The second one is about theological fundamentals, whether they are well thought over, which are used by communities. This is the question brought up by Eduard, and together with Roman Pavlovich, we help these people trying to make sure that we have some proselytizing practices. It is also about some practical things, shelter and bread. And the third one about service of theological institutions, what is their role in reconciliation, because we have a lot of discord, we have some schisms related to families. There are some who are in Ukraine there are some who are outside. What about all those splits that we have, and how can church display hospitality to bridge these gaps that we have? Also, I would like to share briefly some of the results because they will be published onwards. There are 2 articles, there is a monography, so we will share this information with you. But to conclude, I would like to answer the results of the survey and some of the answers. There was one of the questions: what exactly in hospitality contributed to the feeling of engagement or involvement by a religious organization? We have 5 answers from refugees and IDPs.
Those are the signs of care on the part of other members of religious community, and also the feeling of being needed. As when a person comes to, for example, to the seminary, and we had on the 22nd of February, we had like dozens of people from the occupied territories. Then kind treatment and also mutual respect. Well, the evangelists know how to treat people with respect, and also the possibility to participate in life of a religious community by participating in various aspects of services and other things. Then catering for the everyday needs by providing the support, because here we have the questions of registration, also some medical assistance and so on, and also creation of the atmosphere of unity and cohesion through joint prayer, and also possibilities for networking and communication. And another question is how hospitality of religious organizations helped you preserve your religious identity. We were not afraid of asking this question, so it was not about changing the identity, but you came as an Orthodox, as a Catholic, as a Greek Catholic, or someone else, because we served Muslims and representatives of other faiths as well. A couple of answers is strengthening the faith and spiritual life through sermons, prayers, and studying the Holy Scriptures, support and assistance, the feeling of not being alone. And it was interesting to see in some seminaries, that evangelists don't smoke, don't drink, but there were some smoking places established for the newcomers, and that's also a sign of hospitality, because you cannot ask a person to leave if they smoke, but they are used to doing things like that. And then that's also the possibility of following their religious rites, a personal example of service from the others. And there were several other questions, and the key conclusions we've made are that we could do a lot in the humanitarian field, and that's commendable, because many IDPs speak about that. At the same time, what concerns the theological challenges concerning the motives of why we're doing this and how long are we ready to continue, or whether it's just a one-time practice, or whether it's becoming a part of our life. But then we're also changing the life of our community and include these topics into our theological programs. And so on. So when we process everything, we will share the results of our research. Thank you very much for being with us. And it is very interesting when we talked about whether we are ready to accept and change, because, we will speak about IDPs a bit later, but, generally it's not that easy, but we still do this. But there are some more complicated questions. During the Ecumenical Social Week, we have already raised this question that Ukraine, being a member of the European Union, may face a phenomenon of migration, and we may have other people coming here. It's not like Ukrainians migrating from south or from east to west. And we may also face migration from countries with the Muslim majority. So they will have to integrate into the Ukrainian society somehow, and there will be more communities who have their own truth. And very frequently, when we speak about Christian hospitality, we speak about it through some pink glasses. Well, now Abraham didn't look, and he didn't even notice whether those are three killers coming to kill him, and he opened his home to them. So when we speak about this hospitality, some things may be dangerous for the community, for the state. But is it really so? Can we as Christians offer the country some useful model to deal with migrants, especially from the Muslim East? And Mr. Nazarenko, this is a question to you because you know more about Muslim East. Thank you for your question. I think that to begin with, we have to differentiate between the political aspect and the religious aspect. And I would like to unexpectedly for myself quote Mrs. Merkel, who said that the biggest problem during her cadus was the migration policy. In Europe, this was the so-called blind tolerance, where the waves of refugees and migrants who were flowing into Europe, they did not become a problem as such, but with the breakout, they rather actually highlighted, just as the pandemic and our war, they showed the West their own crisis of identity because there was no understanding of what to do with these people and how to treat them. On the one hand, as Europeans says, we are open to everyone, we are happy to welcome anyone, but at the same time, we expect very quick assimilation from these people. But there are people who have their own paradigm of thinking, and the Arab paradigm of thinking is something you cannot easily assimilate. I like this example. Maybe not everyone would like it, but a Ukrainian going from Lviv to border with Poland, would go down the road with the speed of 170 kilometers, but then they would cross the road and drive 40 kilometers per hour there. But it doesn't work with the Arab population. They have their own paradigm, and you cannot easily squeeze it out. So, on the one hand, they say that the European countries say that they pay them, they provide them some support every day. But on the other hand, then there's the question, so what's next? There are two options. First, we just support them, and this is expensive for us. The Europeans ask, why should we do that? And that's a just question. But on the other hand, we can't send them back because this is not according to European values and so on. So lack of this hospitality is one thing, but also there is this lack of understanding of who are other people. I think that this was, the first step was made by the so-called collective West, but I don't think it exists anymore because the war and the pandemic actually, destroyed it. Christianity may be replaced by some secular manifestations of that, and if the continent was based or acted according to Christian values, the policy would be very different. So we have to distinguish here between the religious and political component. Coming back to Ukraine and to your question here, you're right. According to the research, there will be not everybody likes this, but we have to mature and accept it. Ukraine will be reconstructed by people from Middle East, like former Soviet republics from that part of the world, and mainly Muslim population. And in Muslims, just as in Christianity, they are different. They are practicing ones and they are nominal ones. Well, in Christianity, we also have people who just come to church when it is Easter once a year. So these are these nominal Christians. And then there are practical Christians who, regularly go to church. And the same story goes about Islam, and these representatives of Middle East, they are many of those of the Soviet republics. They are rather nominal Islamists. On the other hand, in the Islamic world, especially in the Arab world and in the North American world, they are now also have a lot of impact of secularism. Every second resident of Tunisia from aged 15 to 29 believe themselves to be a nominal Muslim. So they may go to a mosque on Friday, but they can also drink some beer with you if nobody's watching. So we shouldn't have any illusions that we will, like, when 10 Muslims will come in, they will enslave the whole Europe. And then, again, the experience of Europe, which I started from, is also related to Ukrainians. Are Ukrainians tolerant? Well, mostly, yes. I like this mostly added here because it's not always so. If you go on Facebook, the level of intellectual discussions in the Ukrainian segment of Facebook is at the level of the 13-year-old teenager. Why am I telling this? I'm trying to say that looking at the European experience, we have to ask ourselves, how can we look at the others? And we have one advantage the Europeans don't have, since you've asked about Islam. In Europe, if we don't take into account Spain or some other countries, it appeared in the 1950s. But in Ukraine, we don't have a Muslim minority. We have the indigenous people here. And so this is like centuries of presence of Islam in Ukraine, in cultural sense, in political sense, and this is a part of our identity. So until Ukrainians understand that you can be born Ukrainian, but you can also become Ukrainian, you can have a different skin color, different religion, different language, but you can have a Ukrainian passport and feel as Ukrainian here. Well, as soon as we understand this, then we will not have any questions about this hospitality, because you're right to say that this migration will come. And I feel myself, when I came from Lviv to the Netherlands, I started missing old Ukrainian. I am from Crimea. I never sang Ukrainian songs, but in the Netherlands, I felt that I should go to this community meeting, which we had once a month, because this is the only opportunity to speak Ukrainian and to sing Ukrainian and so on. And the same happens with the Arabs in Europe. And the same will be in Ukraine. So let's take, for example, Chuhuiv, a Ukrainian city. So they will be rebuilding Chuhuiv or Izum, and they will ask a small building where they can actually pray. I think we will definitely meet this need of theirs. Then there will be the next step. For example, Kurban Bayram festival. When they sacrifice a ram. This is based on the biblical story about Abraham and Ibrahim. And if you understand what it is about, it evokes less aggression. But we have to understand what our aggression to this other is, what our attitude to this other is. So there has to be some clear understanding of how to treat the others. Like there's this declaration Nostra Aetate, which actually, this is the declaration of the Second Vatican Council, where they documented officially attitude to representatives of other religions. The Catholic Church, that there are Abrahamic religions, like Judaism and Islam, and they speak about the so-called sparks of truth, like the divine spark which exists in Buddhism and Hinduism. So generally, the Catholic Church has indicated that they are our brothers or our cousins. So how do you treat them? So either I treat them with religious attitude, or I'm hostile towards them. But here we have to separate this religious component and also historical component. And just as the Catholic Church evolved from there were four periods: the polemic period, then there was the period of let's translate Quran and read what it is about. So that's the 12th century. They were trying to figure out what Quran is about. Then the next third period is mission, where they said, okay, we understand what's there. We have to talk to them and try to convert them. And then the fourth period is, let's not stop trying to convert them, let's have a dialogue with them, because if we are trying to convert each other, it won't result in anything good. So if we try to do that to them, they will try to do this to them. So the question is, what is our Christian reality? What would Jesus do? Would he say that they want to convert us, so let us get an army and try to oppress them first? I think he would do it in a different way. So he should be a kind of a role model, because he communicated with the representatives of other faiths. And I think that we should not be so much afraid of the others, but we should be focusing on developing our own tradition. And we should not be afraid of learning about the others. Because the Christian values have to be so strong for us that we don't see the others as a threat to us, but we see the others as equal partners. Thank you. It was very interesting. Don't put the microphone down, because there's another question. The fact that these migrants we will have will be different from the ones that went to Europe. It's just that we are trying to extrapolate European experience on our ground, but everything may be very different for us. And secondly, if we look at our closest neighbors, Christian parties, yesterday was an attempt to discuss Christian parties. The parties which position themselves as Christian ones, I'm not sure they actually chose this model of Christ you spoke about. I'm speaking here about Poland in the European Union and their context of attitude to migrants and the migration crisis. And Stanislav Pietu from Peace claims that Islam is not a religion of peace, but a totalitarian system, and he says there's no possibility to have any peaceful agreement because Islamists came here to kill Europeans. That's a quotation from 2017. It's very populist, but this is generally a description of the party which is trying to position itself as a Catholic party. So this is one of their strong arguments, their videos they showed, and Christians are perceived as anti-hospitable. They are those who are afraid of the other. So is there a chance we will repeat this Polish scenario in traditional churches? And you also spoke a bit about what helps us avoid this experience, this experience of coexistence with Islam we've had. So what do you think? Are we following a similar logic, and what could help us avoid it? That's a good question, and I will tell you more. In the Netherlands, the Helder Wilders party won there, and his main motto was look at what's happening in the Netherlands. Look at the national football team of the Netherlands. Look at the churches. Churches are empty, and just as the Social Democratic Party of Germany, they had a representative Stila Saracen, and he was also speaking about poverty and education. So these moods are winning not only in Poland, but in other European parliaments as well. And I'm far from being romantic to say that we will not be there. I cannot support their opinion because they seem to be absurd, but I should also not be a romantic and say that our life will be great and beautiful. So there are different experiences. Why will we not have the Polish scenario, in my opinion? Because we have the religious pluralism. In Poland or in Russia, they have a dominant religious community. For example, in Ukraine or in the United States, we have a maximum plurality of opinions. Maybe it's just the experience of our institute. Sheikh or imam visits us more frequently than an Orthodox bishop or an Orthodox priest at our events. And it seems to be the number of visits of Muslims is enough, but we lack Orthodox presence. Yesterday we had Father Dmitriev at our lecture. I invited him to our students, and I talked to Muslims, and they said we have 10 times more events with Greek Catholics than with other Muslims. So it seems like we have better context with those with whom we are not competing, rather than those who are seemingly closer to us. So we have this pluralism of thoughts and ideas, and look at what made us united, and what showed the importance of religious presence. That's the revolution of dignity and the war. In Ukraine, many people identify themselves as faithful, and they see when there's a revolution of dignity, when there is a war, they see that there's a Christian chaplain, there's a Muslim chaplain. There was a chapel on Maidan, and for everyone, and also Orthodox and other communities opened the churches for those who were persecuted, and this is. These are specific people who you can talk to, and who will open the doors of the church to you, people who will be in the trenches with you, people who support you when you have lost someone, and they see the church as beside you. And there are so many examples of like that in Protestant communities and Orthodox and Catholic ones and Muslim communities and other communities.
So we have this outstanding, fantastic experience of religious pluralism that Europe doesn't have on the one hand. At the same time, it can be something that is protected on those wounds which hurt so much in our society. This is a fantastic synergy that we are witnessing. That is why I think that, playing on interfaith conflicts, we know the situation with one church which calls itself an Orthodox church. However, if we put it aside, I think that we have such a deeply rooted interfaith community. What we hear from the person that you just mentioned, I think that in the foreseeable future, that is something that is not going to happen in Ukraine. Yes, of course, those components are still with us. We cannot throw them away or discard them. Thank you for all the clarifications. It's really great to be a moderator because you get to learn so much by asking the questions that you want to know the answers to. You also mentioned about Muslims, and you mentioned about secularized Muslims, a different category, which is really interesting because we also have secularized Ukrainians. These are not only secularized Muslims that we have. According to statistics, I think that I know the figures in the Greek Catholic Church. Well, according to the clergyman, we have some 15% present at a Sunday liturgy. If we take Sihiv neighborhood, Sihiv district, they have some 6,000 parishioners. On Sundays, big holidays. If to speak about other regions, I am from Kryvyi Rih. In fact, we have the figure of 100%. These are traditional churches, not Protestant church in the city of Kryvyi Rih. The Orthodox Greek Catholic Church, well, these are the so-called traditional churches. This is only 1%. The majority of people are not believers or are non-believers. It's not really easy to find a place where they belong to. So my question is, how do we communicate if we decide to communicate? Whether they will come to us or we wait for them to come to us, they will repent, and then we will have communications. How do we work with these people? This is such a good question for me. Thank you for being with us, Bishop Fedir, because you know that Poltava and Kremenchuk, they are different from Kryvyi Rih. However, I don't think that it is 17% on a Sunday liturgy as it is here, for instance. My question is about communications with the secular part. It is not necessarily hostile to us or indifferent to us. Maybe there is something that we can offer to them, or maybe they come to us and then we will have this dialogue. Maybe you have some experience. And why do we need this communication altogether? Thank you, Eduard, for your question, for your moderation. I am really struck by everything I have heard just now. It's really impressive, all the messages that I hear from our speakers. I think that the statistics of Poltava is the same as in Kryvyi Rih, some 1.5%. These are people who regularly go to church on Sundays and on big holidays. Also, we have many faithful who go to church when we have some important religious feasts, when we say Christ has risen and many other ones. We know that we had a change of our calendar tradition. They request about us celebrating Christmas on the 25th of December, and actually it had a positive impact, and we can see that there are more people coming to church because of this change. I'm speaking about Christmas, the 25th of December. However, if you speak about Poltava, my region, other neighboring regions, of course, that this is the region where those who tried hard to free us, those who are trying hard actually to decimate us as in the past, we know about 1,700 churches destroyed. These are different monumentals. We have the Hushchenko archive. That was the person, he took pictures and did many other things to evaluate the situation. And now when you try to understand how much was destroyed, it is just heartbreaking. These are both objects of architectural and religious importance. That is why I have to speak about all denominations in Poltava region and actually in regions close to you. This is us being missionaries. When we do missionary work, trying to make sure that Christians, they are more involved in what we do. Frankly speaking, in the beginning, I didn't understand what approaches to apply. However, that was a natural process. It came naturally. I think that through hospitality, we didn't have any other solution. Through openness, frankness, this easiness, aplotas, you really need to be open to people. It is about you being sincere and open and genuine. Once we had a camp for youth. It was in Ivano-Frankivsk region. When I went to the Kalosh City Council and I said, good morning, but I was wearing my religious outfit, and those civil servants, they were so surprised because I used a civil form of greeting and there was also a handshake. I understood that was an epic failure because they didn't understand how it was possible for a priest to say good afternoon, not to use a traditional religious greeting, and moreover to compliment it with a handshake. However, it is a norm for me. Another thing that I would like to say, with reference to survey fundings and hospitality and war and volunteering, since 2014, we have seen a lot of impact in terms of this. Oh yes, there will be a new term. If to speak about volunteering, actually, volunteering is something which brought together many people. And Christian communities, they are closer to secular communities now. Since 2014, we know that all churches, all parishes, they became volunteering hubs. Evangelical Christians, they started using Ukrainian language for their sermons because in the past they used the Russian language, Russian text, Russian gospel. They stopped being afraid of church, many of them, because there is this idea of many secular believers that church is a place where you can be scolded for something if you're not dressed properly or something. And we understand that actually that was something happening, especially to speak about the Russian church. This is an ethos. That is why such fears are not unfounded. Our cathedral became a volunteer hub. You know that if there are hundreds and hundreds of people and you enter the church and you have your hat on, you're not thinking about that. You know, even if the person crosses themselves entering the church, that is already good. Or when they are laughing because they're making some tea or doing something else, it became a norm. However, later, those people who were volunteers, they turned into a great community. We have a foundation. We have Natalia Runchak, she's present here, who is the head of this foundation. These people, they were united by it. Not all of them. I understand that as a Christian, it is important for me that those Christians, they become more conscious, more aware. However, this is a voluntary process. It takes time, and it is only through hospitality. It is only through our openness, hospitality, genuineness, when we do it honestly, sincerely, having no claims to them, then they understand that they become more supportive. We have a cafe on Thursday and Friday. We have the violin and piano concerts. 100% of revenue goes to the needs that we currently have. These are donations. Of course, that some people who belong to the Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, they are skeptical. They don't like that there is a coffee shop near the cathedral. The children of Poltava no longer know who Did Moroz is, this grandfather Frost that was in the past, and this battalion, this of those people who are caring, it is very important. There was also a very important person in the 18th century, somebody who is equal to Skovoroda. Skovoroda is from Chernucha in Poltava region, and there was another person, Paisi Velichkovsky, Reverend Paisi, who revived a monk tradition, because now I understand what it means about fulfilling the commandment. And he says that the gospel commandments are actually different. It is gentleness, it is love, and it is humility. It's very important that your heart is open to all of them, even if you are wearing a hat, even if you give somebody a handshake in a church, even if you cross yourself the other way around, or you forgot to cross yourself when you enter the church. Love is a fundamental virtue of all Christians, no matter what is the denomination that they belong to. Now we have a priest movement from the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Moscow Patriarchate. There was a meeting, which was there was a secret meeting because they have their fears. And I asked the question, Reverend, could you tell me what is your biggest problem? Because I know it, and I hear this conversation that you are thinking about subordination of Constantinople, Romanian, but we do not want to sit together at the round table and start this conversation. I asked this question, why do you have this view, this stance? And he is trying to explain, we always thought that you are that we were Orthodox and you were this bleeding wound, and you are schismatics. There is also this Byzantine tradition, celebration of orthodoxy. We also know about anathema against Hetman Mazepa, and they still have it in Russia. It is rudimental, it is a vestige of the past. And actually, there is this story of stray sheep, and this is the way how I feel. However, let's think about the words of Christ, trying to find a stray sheep. No matter how hard I try to convince them to start this dialogue, they say, no, we cannot do that. We are not allowed to have it. I think that it could be explained by a lack of love and a lack of understanding of what Christianity is. Because when we have a good understanding of Christianity, a deep understanding, we can have many problems resolved because love prevails over all barriers, it overcomes all the obstacles. Thank you. These were really nice words. And maybe we can build on what you have mentioned. It's great that we have Natalia Kremenchuk with us, who closely cooperates with church through the activities of a charity. When we have our Q&A session, we would be grateful to hear more about your activities. And Reverend, you have also mentioned another important topic, attempts to build connections and communications with Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Moscow Patriarchate, and also perception and accepting people by means of hostility. I know that this is what we see in Kyiv. I'm not sure about Poltava's case. As a matter of fact, hospitality, this selective hospitality, was there in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Moscow Patriarchate as well. It was one of the types. When we have secular people who are nominally Christians, donors, partners, members of parliaments, they have a special place at altar, and they offered some consecration. We know that in Byzantine times, such people could carry candles, and we know that these people, they could be deacons. So what about our hospitality towards representatives of authorities, of power, donors, those who are secular? I think this is one of legitimate means of getting them more engaged. However, about these terms of churchizing somebody, does that equal to make somebody Christian? Because of course you can learn how to cross yourself and many other things. I will try to be more precise. This practice that you have, I mean, if you are so open as to share it, do you have something similar? How do you foster these connections? What are the conditions for hospitality that you have? Because you have spoken about your hospitality. And are you also a guest? And does it make a sense for you to be a guest for other representatives of society, including representatives of power here? Yes, I think that sometimes when we have businessmen or public figures coming to us, politicians, we treat them in a special way. And of course that it is something that could still be discussed. However, you try to stop yourself there. That you do not want us to please somebody. You don't want to indoctrinate the person. You want to show the person Christ. You just don't want somebody to become a deacon just like that. And well, we know about a well-known Ukrainian boxing champion, and he's the person who's still dubious about his civil stance and about the country that he represents and many other things. However, my personal conviction is that we try our best to have equal attitude to all people who come to our church. That is why there are, of course, some homeless people who abuse our hospitality. And it's important to find a balance here, because you take this person according to Christ's teaching. But then it happens in a number of ways. And denomination, which is the core former Kiev Patriarchate, we had a long-standing tradition of our authorities interfering in what we do when we needed some land allocated, or we wanted to start the parish, especially in the east of Ukraine or Crimea. Before the annexation, I went to Crimea to support our colleague Bishop Clement. Now he's a military chaplain, and there is a priest near Eupatoria. There was a foundation for a small church, and there was a politician who came and said that if you do not want to have fire here, please make sure that you do not do anything, that you disassemble everything. And of course, that we understand that a vector of development can change, but we need to follow Christ.
Whether we will be able to preserve this memory and this immunity, that's a question. At the moment, we manage to be hospitable and to treat all people more or less equally, and remember that we offer them spirituality, Christian spirituality, and some more values, not just material ones. Thank you very much. This was the first round of my questions and answers, and I'm very grateful to you for all these questions. I have more questions and I have more suggestions, but I'm afraid that if I keep asking them, we will not be able to actually finish on time, because you're here also to ask questions, to hear the answers. So I suggest that we do it this way. We have a microphone which will be passed on, and there's a person who will be passing it on. That's Taras here. So I suggest that the questions, proposals are voiced here. So let us start with you. No. Taras Kurolaitz, Institute of Ecumenical Studies. And I just wanted to help a colleague to pass on the microphone. But I also have a question, so I will use this right of mine and ask a question. I have a question to Roman Nazarenko. During these 3 days, we have mentioned several times that for Ukraine's recovery, we will need to look at the situation realistically, and we have to understand that migration will be there. But why do you think they will come from Central Asia? Because to have migration into Ukraine, for people to come here, we need to there should be people whose situation is worse than ours. So for me, it's not only Central Asia, but these are not former Soviet republics. This may be Afghanistan and other republics. My question is also to Roman, will these only be representatives of Central Asia? Because I think we may have other options here as well. And there's the question, there's this awakening of identity in migrants, and During a lecture, we were discussing about German, the migrants in Germany, that many Muslims are rather nominal when they are home, but when they come to a different country and they come into a community there, so just like you mentioned that you liked coming together with the Ukrainians and singing Ukrainian songs in the Netherlands, the same works for them in the European countries. And yesterday we talked about the fact that we will be able to make new Ukrainians out of them. But the problem here is that those communities who come here, they have this tendency towards encapsulation. So they have, they live in their community, they marry within their communities. So there are three questions. Is it really Central Asia only, or are there other options? But it looks like it's generally a Muslim world. And second, the identity in these communities. And the third question is, will assimilation be a simple step, and can it actually take place? Thank you. Thank you, Taras. I don't even know whether we should be speaking about the category of assimilation. It's, it seems like, like kind of superiority or arrogance, like you have come here, so, do something for us and then we'll decide what to do with you. So this is not my invention. This is what I've heard from Ukrinform and from other colleagues working on this research. So that's why I mentioned Central Asia. So this is what I'm referring to. Apparently, Middle East is number 2 here, and these are those countries who had their great student representation here, because they came here to study medicine and so on. So that may be Afghanistan, of course, but from what colleagues mentioned, that was, Central Asia in its total majority, because life they could expect here is better than there, because the countries we're talking about, some of them are closed and totalitarian, and the others, the level of poverty is very high. Of course, there are powerful countries like Kazakhstan, for example, but if we speak about the post-Soviet countries, is that they don't have this language barrier because they understand the Russian language. And if we take a Syrian and an Uzbek will feel here better because he will be able to ask something in Russian and will get an answer. He will be able to read something and understand something. So I think that's one of the reasons why we are speaking about them. And then in these countries, there's a tradition of many decades to go somewhere, earn money. And previously they went to Moscow, but generally we can say that they don't have very big demands towards the context and the situation. You may have heard about the situations when dozens of people live in the same room and so on. These are a bit stereotypical impressions, but that has a grain of truth. But generally, I think that our colleagues who from Ukrinform, who are professional sociologists, they analyzed it somehow. And then the next point is this deepening the feeling of community. And I mentioned this example about the Netherlands. Because I talked to the imam from Utrecht, and he told me that those who come to the Muslims who come there, they are more practicing because in their quarters, in their neighborhoods, everything is in Arabic and so on. Do they have right to come to another country even if they understand the context and have some common history or understand the mentality? Well, can they come there and be a bit closed in terms of, staying close together and, preserving their cultural and religious identity? I think they do have the right for that. And I think that we have to help them in that. And there is the European experience, and I'm intentionally speaking about that because they are good examples. People expected that they will come to Izum, to Chuhuyev, somewhere else. They will build the homes here and they will get assimilated very quickly. Doesn't work like that. It's out of context, not only religious context, but generally human context. At least that's what it seems to me. So I would not talk much about assimilation. I would speak more about what we are doing. So don't see it as an advertising, but at the Ukrainian Catholic University, we have an online platform, and I have a course there where we speak about Islam, but not from the theological perspective. We speak about the football championship, Charlie Hebdo, popular culture, and I have selected so many topics, and people who have not watched this course have been producing a lot of hate towards Muslims, and it seems to me that there are several answers why we may need this. This may be Judaism or other religions in Ukraine, they can have some impact. But the more we know about the traditions of the others, understanding that they will be here sooner or later, the easier it will be for us to communicate with them. And the second, what many of our combatants don't understand, like asking, why do we need this? When our combatants cross the border of Crimea, that will be communicating mainly with Crimean Tatars. So why have we started Crimean Tatar language courses at the Ukrainian Catholic University? Because we believe that these are the steps that will bring our victory closer. Because when our military go into Crimea, they will meet Crimean Tatars, and the more they know about their history and about their religion and culture, the better. Because we think that deportation of Crimean Tatars is our pain, but it should be our pain because this is the common Ukrainian history. And it seems to me that, on the contrary, the paradox is, so keeping in mind that I'm not an interreligious romantic, let us launch, let us open, and so on, I understand this, and there are cases when it was grounded, but it was because there was no they didn't have their own identity, and what they wanted was unrealistic. They didn't take into account the context of those people. They didn't understand that these people could not be assimilated. But if we create the hubs where we support, where we learn about their culture, where we share our culture, and where we have this mutual exchange, people will want to live here, but people will want not to create an Uzbekistan or Tajikistan here, but they will want to live in a great progressive country, which is a member of the European Union, hopefully, and has safe skies above them, is a member of NATO, and so on. So I think we should be less afraid, but we should show that, yes, we are a pluralistic country. We have all religions here living together. We are grateful to you. We show our hospitality to you. You could have stayed in your countries, but you come here risking and understanding that, you may be hit by a missile any moment. We are grateful to you for that. If I was in Europe, instead of Merkel or someone else, I would say, dear friends, you come here, we accept you, we welcome you, we are hospitable, we understand that you have lived through a tragedy, we accept you, you want to live here, so let's, we give you 3 months of time for adaptation, so just to come round, and after that you will have 6 months to go to the courses, like in France, where you can't get housing if you don't attend the French language classes. So you have to learn the language of our country and the history of our country, and then you pass the exam. If you pass the exam, you're welcome to find a job. We will help you in that. You can profess your religion, you can cherish your culture, but these are our rules. If you fail the exam, we will give you money, just as the Czechs do now with Ukrainians, and help you go back home. It seems to me, this is very subjectively, but it seems to me that this is a good policy. I have very little optimism about our policy in future, but can we offer these people good conditions? Yes, we can. It's just that it seems to me that there's a very important moment. We are now fighting against the colonizers. We're fighting for the right to to use our own language and to cherish our country. When Crimean Tatars are asking for the same, we are turning from people fighting against colonizers into the colonizers. We say, well, now is not the right time for that. Let us think about it. And it's like a click. It's like pressing a button. So it's a very dangerous thing. We shouldn't turn into that policy that Russia is using. We are famous for our hospitality. We need to think it through. If you want to come and rebuild our country, please do. But without this blind tolerance, because we have this European example and the crisis they are facing right now. Thank you. I see a hand with questions and then another one as well, but let us start from here. I would just like to comment on our discussion here. During our first meeting, we talked about Ukrainian identity and how to build it, about its civilizational dimension and so on. And a very good example to understand, Joseph Cecils mentioned that in the beginning of Ukraine's independence, we were Jews in Ukraine. And then we realized that we want to become Ukrainian Jews. So it's a change of paradigm. The same goes about these migrants. They can be migrants in Ukraine, or they can be Ukrainian migrants. So how do we change this paradigm? How do we work? This is a two-way street, and this is about their wish, and it's also about our work. But also the religion can play a significant role here, like Islam, for example, and can be Russian. But it can be Ukrainian, which protects Ukraine. Or Orthodoxy may be Ukrainian, fighting for the independence of Ukraine, or one fighting for expansion. So this is about presenting this Ukrainian identity, because we will have to change something. They will have to change something, and we will have to change something. Thank you. Great. Could you please pass the microphone here? Hello, my name is Miroslava Kerek. I'm from the Ukrainian house in Warsaw. Thank you for this discussion. It's very interesting for me, because we can say that as Ukrainian house, we have hosted 14,000 of Ukrainian refugees in Polish homes. And this discussion reminds me of those discussions we have in Poland. On the one hand, Poland is a Catholic state, but on the other hand, when I look at those who accepted refugees, in many cases, those were not Christians first. They are people first. And sometimes these people are not connected to church in any way. So the church did play its role, but there was sometimes also this conflict between the role of the Catholic Church as a politically strong institution, and that caused a lot of negative attitude towards the Catholic Church in the society, because it interferes into the political life. But it seems to me that for those Poles who are very faithful, who are, sincere Christians, this is one of the elements of how to behave. Together with the Club of Catholic Intellectuals, we are establishing a Ukrainian school, and they're helping Ukrainian children because they see it as their way to be good Christians. And thank you for this discussion about migration, because I'm a migrant as well, and this is about attitude to me. And there are these different concepts in Europe. Germany is maybe not the best example, because they really wanted these people to come as Osterbarters, to come to work and then to leave. So, but this is not just a worker, this is a person with their personal needs. They want to get married, they want to have stability and many other things. They want to profess their religion, they want to cherish their culture. And that's, I would say that the word assimilation is a bad word. In Poland, it is also used that we have to assimilate Ukrainians. And they think it's a good word, because that means that they will allow them being Ukrainians at the time. But that means refusing from everything we are and becoming Poles. And integration, some people say that integration is also too much because we want for them to integrate into our society. But actually, it's integration, like it's a mutual process. It's not a one-way process. And also from what I know, the psychological research says that if we let a community who comes to us to practice their language, to cherish their culture, to be recognized for what they are. Like, I'm Ukrainian, I have my language, I have my religion, and I can profess it. Then I integrate into the society and see it as mine because they recognize me as I am. And it seems to me that in Ukraine, the recognition of those people who come as they are, and saying that we are a pluralistic society. I think this is the future. It's very important for me. It's a big value for me. And one more remark I wanted to ask you, because we see the mission of the Orthodox Church in Warsaw. And we see Roman here. We know that there's a Ukrainian evangelist community in Warsaw. There are many people there, and the Greek Catholic Church has a whole network there. So I have a question of, well, most people there are guests at the moment. So how will the church be working when Ukrainians go back home? How do we reintegrate them? Because that will also be a big challenge. And also, how do you see this possibility of people staying there? How do we work on them being not excluded from the Ukrainian community if they decide to stay abroad because of their life reasons of children or some other things?
Thank you for your reflection. Thank you for your question. Do you address this question to all the panelists? Yes. So 2 minutes for each. Let's start with Dr. Roman Solovii. But this is quite a set of questions with regard to those communities which are in Europe currently. Before the all-out war, we had Ukrainian Protestant communities in Spain, Italy, because we had many economic migrants from Ukraine, and many people, they fled from Ukraine, we know. I think that we have 25-30% now, which equals the general number of people who left Ukraine. If to speak about Protestant church, those, especially those who are close to front line, to the border, the Ukrainian evangelical society has their own institution. In Warsaw, there is a Christian academy. This is an educational facility of a basic level. Some other seminaries launched different training programs for ministers. We have regular meetings. Also, in the structure of this union, we have different sectors. We have representatives in different countries. We have presbyters to consolidate these communities, to give them moral, spiritual support, to make sure that they have education and that they are connected to Ukraine. Of course, that it is undergoing. However, the question of returning, in most cases, it is not something relevant as of now. We need to see some prospects of the fighting being over, and it is not a secret that many people who left Donetsk region, where we had very many Protestant, especially evangelical Protestant, that was a very big hub for Baptists. They don't have where to go back to. That is why they're not ready to return there. There is another tragedy which we haven't touched upon. It is about those people who are still under occupation and they still want to have their church activities. Some of them have a neutral position. They say that we do not interact with the new authorities, and we just come together and we pray. But those people, those who had pro-Russian views, we understand that some of these churches can still be pro-Russian. We are expecting the occupation, and we need to know how to work with these people as well later. This is a range of challenges that will be faced as, yes, that we will have another discussion tomorrow. But as far as the diaspora is concerned, I think that we have achieved quite good results. I think that they will be part of the Ukrainian circle. There is another challenge, and this is a challenge for the Ukrainian diaspora. Many people fled from Russian-speaking regions. That is why when I hear this Russian name, the Ukrainian church in the city of something, I'm just asking, what makes you Ukrainian then, if you call yourself in Russian? And also many churches, Ukrainian, Slavic churches in Germany, in Poland, when Ukrainians started coming with more Ukrainian identity, they wanted to integrate into these churches. It proved to be very difficult because for some of them Russian was a native language, but for some of them it wasn't. It was a challenge. And even in Germany there were churches of Kazakh Germans. Those Ukrainians who arrived, they didn't want to be in a Russian-speaking environment. That is why these are quite complex processes. I think that there could be a lot of research done and many publications dedicated to this topic. Thank you. Thank you. As far as the Orthodox Church is concerned, we have some difficulties if to speak about cooperation with Germany because they have a local Polish Orthodox Church and they largely have pro-Russian position. If to speak about their episcopate, there were some greetings to Cyril from this church. Sava congratulated him and wished him to defeat the evil, and I think that yes, it explains the difficulty in communication that we have. We cannot act officially and canonically because we will violate our canons, the canons of a local church. That is why we have missionary work, we have chaplains in Warsaw. I am also grateful to our Jesuit colleagues who hosted me in their college. Also, there are some of them are chaplains abroad, but of course we still have many difficulties. In answer to your question about returning and reintegration, we haven't started this dialogue yet because we have not started working on that, but we stand ready to accept the people. I think that you know best about Poland, about the situation with Greek Catholic Church. I really like the term that you used, reintegration. In fact, the role of religious communities in these processes could be crucial. I know that probably there is a long way for us before we prevail in this war, but just imagine that there is some peace established, some truce established, there's some compromise, even if we lose some territories. I think that rumor has it, yes, we hear about that from the media. So there are combatants returning, and they return with the feeling that, well, basically they didn't win. Then we will have borders open, though I know that this is not going to happen in the near future and people can return. Then there will be a question, where were you and what was your contribution in this victory? If I was on the front line, then what about your whereabouts then? That will be a major challenges in society. And of course, it can cause a lot of havoc. That is why I think that this is the role of churches to help us to deal with that, to restrain these horses, so to say. We are in the same boat. I don't think that we need to make the situation worse and to rock the boat right now. We are a religious country, to speak about our believers. I think that religion can play an instrumental role here. Thank you for mentioning it. We really need to communicate more. We need to have more communication. I know that probably it's too early to speak about all of that, but I think that we really need to speak more during our Sunday preaching, that it is more about love, compassion to each other, commandments. I think that this is important, and less hatred. Yes. Just one moment. I would like to remind you that for our online participants, that you can also leave your questions in a chat box. We will see your questions and I will read your question out. I mean, if there are any questions from online participants, of course, there was Semko, a student of Kyiv Spiritual Schools, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. We heard from Reverend Fedir about hospitality between different denominations. I'm a student, and of course, I cannot disagree with Bishop. I can share. Yes, but so I would like to contest this idea about hospitality between the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. Yes, we have a dialogue. This dialogue is taking place here in this room. We have a dialogue in the capital of Ukraine, near Patriarchy Hotel. If to speak about more formal, official dialogue, the students have a request for this dialogue, because you mentioned a priest who is afraid that there could be some repercussions for him because of bishops. But believe me that we are not afraid of bishops. We could be afraid of our exams. Yes, that is something that could be quite scary, but not of those who are above us. There is one obstacle which doesn't make it possible for us to launch this dialogue and to have a greater dialogue. These are developments related to those changes that we have, and these parishes converting, joining another wing. And I think that if we manage to actually deal with that situation, we will have a better situation. And you also mentioned another problem, the problem of ordinations. However, if it is about canonical law and some other books, this question of ordinations or consecrations could be resolved in different ways. For us as students of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, the most important thing is that we start this dialogue without any external pressure, in a peaceful manner, as also in this canonical liturgical dimension, with participation of public authorities, NGOs, and others. I think that there was also a question in the first part. It was about the church. Was that a question about this church transition, or that was a remark or a question? No, that was a general comment. In reference to a dialogue, if this is a dialogue where certain conditions are being posed, that we are ready to this discussion, but there is this but, I'm a little bit older than you, and we always have this whataboutism. Yes, we always have this but. It's really great that you participate in this dialogue. As you mentioned, there is a dialogue here in this room. There is a dialogue that you can have elsewhere, and we have had this dialogue for many years. It was also clandestine. We had this communication ongoing, actually. However, the dialogue is also about hospitality. When you do not have this but, when we have a conversation, I am ready to initiate. If students are not afraid, I'm ready to just send a formal letter to your institution for you officially to be blessed to participate in this dialogue. I'm absolutely open to that. Thank you for your answer. I have a question. If to speak about this, how do you distinguish between hospitality and tolerance? Because we know that these could be different things. There are some restrictions when it comes to tolerance. And the second one, but the church can promote cherishing of hospitality, because we have Habermas, some political secular philosophers who say that church and politics. Well, this is about meta narration, and this is something that doesn't allow us to have an open communicative act. This is a question to all our panelists, but the first one to answer will be Roman. Some 2-3 minutes for your comment. Of course, we do not make them equal. Tolerance and hospitality, definitely they are not the same. If to explore this problem in philosophy, in theology, such themes as hospitality were a response to the fact that this concept of tolerance was not enough. Level Evanas, the family which suffered in the Second World War, a wife was the only one who survived because the Catholic monastery helped her. She was hiding there. The French Catholics were helping her. Her husband, Levinas, was imprisoned. He was a prisoner of war. He was one of the first one to mention about that. Tolerance is that I agree that there is something else, but I don't want to do anything about it. I don't really want to I'm in my environment. Something exists in a different environment. I acknowledge that it exists as it is. Levinas and Jacques Derrida later, they contest this theory, and Levinas says that my relations with somebody close to me are not symmetrical, they are asymmetrical. Each time I meet somebody, I can read on their face, do not kill. I always owe something to them. I am a hostage of love, and Jacques Derrida speaks about unconditional hospitality without any identification. It is a heavily ethical moment because we can translate it into different languages, the languages of philosophy and many others, but here we focus on a theological paradigm. It is about integrity. It is about this holistic approach. To give some space to somebody. I am a host, but at the same time, I am a guest for somebody else. And when I accept a stranger, when I host a stranger, I also act as a guest because I'm also a guest. So I have two functions. I'm a host and I'm a guest because this home is not part of me. I'm also a guest here. Jacques Derrida writes a lot about that. This law of unconditional hospitality that he had written extensively about at the end of this life when he had a speech at Levinas' funeral. He tried to focus on the fact that this concept was not enough, it was not exhaustive. Also in the 70s, it was important. Religion can play a different role. Probably I could slightly disagree with Roman, who states that plurality of environment gives us more space for hospitality. But what about Hungary? We know that they have pluralism. They have many churches there. They also have a Reformed church, but they have some practices which are not very humane. This is a dominant cultural tradition, and maybe this is the culture combined with the political discourse. It creates a certain atmosphere in Hungary. When there was the question about Syrian refugees, 2014, 15, all highly religious Eastern European countries took an anti-migrant position. Also the Netherlands, which we consider to be more secular, or Germany, and then from conservative circles, we hear a lot that these are not Christian countries, but they were a showcase of Christian practices. If you compare them to Poland, Romania, Hungary, Austria, and others, that is why religion can have both positive and negative role. In the religious tradition, you can find resources for anti-migrant, anti-refugee tendencies or trends. And from this task, according to Christ, you can have many other ideas, narratives, theological assumptions, which could help you to be hostile. It is about your mindset. your personal one, at the level of society. It plays an instrumental role. It is about the resource which is used in a religious tradition. In many countries, many neighboring countries, addressing religious tradition is not just the basis for not very hostile treatment, but not tolerant treatment of others. And religion has a totally different resource, of a totally different culture. It is about your mindset. It is about the very tone which is set in society. That is why I would like not to draw so much on it. Of course, it is positive, and Jose Casanova writes a lot about that, about the advantage of pluralism. However, I'm not sure whether we will be very hospitable to the strangers who come to Ukraine, especially to the west of Ukraine. Why? Because we have a homogeneous society, and Kryvyi Rih and Kharkiv, well, they are more used to the Vietnamese, for example, than Lviv or Drohobyd. Anastasia, in my capacity of moderator, I would like to ask you, yes, to have another answer if you have it, or maybe, yes, another question. Thank you for your presentations. I am Maria. I represent Kyiv Orthodox Theological Academy. I have a twofold question. The first one is about development of something that is yours instead of developing something that is not yours. We know about the example from the Old Testament. So before Christ comes with his universal hospitality, as it has been demonstrated here, God was building its people, the nation, the Jewish nation, in isolation. At least there was an attempt. There was a law for the Jews to be as separate as possible from barbaric pagan nations, for them not to adopt something that God doesn't want to see in this community. Because honestly speaking, we know that Ukraine is still very immature, if to speak about our religiousness. We have very many nominal Christians. And another question, also in reference to the Old Testament, if to speak about the book of Judges from Levite, and it ended with his concubine being killed.
So it may happen that hospitality will actually do harm to the guest if it's aimed not on at real assistance, but just done pro forma. Well, there are two questions. I think we can discuss first state, and then the second one will be discussed during the coffee break. So I will reformulate the first one very briefly. So shouldn't we, well, am I right to understand, should we, cherish our identity by separating from the others? If you don't mind, we will answer just in a minute or two. Let's start from Bishop here. Well, let's start from the other side. Okay, let's start from Roman. 1 minute. You see, it seems to me that, for example, in the Catholic University, there has to be the departments which research Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, and so on. And all the practice of successful universities and communities shows that it's all because of fear. And sometimes having the discussion about Islam, I'm asked, why should we, the Christians, talk about Islam? And what if your lecture has impact on somebody? Are you so afraid? Do you really lack confidence that much? You're so afraid of that you lack confidence in your words and in your sermons that you are afraid of talking about that. I think that we need to think about our theology, our own understanding, and not be afraid of the others. But that means that there has to be some rules of the game which we have to establish. Complete closeness is bad, but also accepting anyone and allowing them to do anything in your home is also a bad thing. So I think we have to get rid of this fear towards the other, but we also have to have clear regulations of how to interact with them. This is what Europe didn't have in those examples we spoke about. I will just mention just a couple of comments about the Book of Judges, because I teach that, and this is one of the best stories, and I am working on the book right now, and I will be writing about the ideology of hospitality there, a chapter in fact, and this is a story about how awful it is when we know little about each other, because the problem was not in the man being delayed, but he was delayed by his father-in-law, who welcomed him very well, and that's why he couldn't get to that place, to Bethlehem, and he stayed in a Jewish city among the Canaan population. And there is this interplay of the status of a guest and a host, because a person who is hosting him is a guest in that city because he's from a different part of Israel there, and people living there, they were not hospitable at all. And that was a complete, lack of hospitality, and people just despise the canon of hospitality. But a person who is a guest here accepts him, invites him to his home, and is ready to sacrifice something just to save this person. On the other hand, this is a story about disdain in regard to woman, because she wasn't asked whether she wants to bury the man. She wasn't asked when she was sent to those men, and even her body after her death was used to organize a bloody revenge for this awful act. But this is a story about the interaction between the host and the guest, and you see it even contradicts your question a bit. It may appear that guests are more hospitable than those who are the hosts here, so we have to cherish this double identity, and we have to remember that we are hosts here. We have our identity, our culture, but we are all guests in this world. And when we realize that it's easier for us to invite the others and welcome them, because we are all guests in God's house. So it's a complicated answer. Well, I wanted to be brief, but I didn't manage that. Well, I will answer just very quickly. From my own experience, I can tell you, the deeper I delve into the Christian tradition, the broader views I have in regard to the others. When I started studying the ascetic tradition of Christianity in more detail, and I immersed myself into the philosophy of antiquity, starting from the Stoics and to the classical philosophers, the terminology, the views, and so on. Christianity is the continuation of the old Greek tradition of Days of bringing up citizens. It's just that Christianity added another level. It's not just bringing up a citizen of a polis, it's bringing up a person as God's intention, implementing God's intention here. So the deeper we go into our tradition, the better we know it, the more open we are to communication, the less afraid we are of some ideas and opinions and contradict them. When I studied at seminary, I could not imagine that I'd be interpreting a biblical story about Adam and Eve as a myth in a good sense of this word, as a narrative or the days of creation. I perceived it literally, but today my basis of faith is still the same, but I perceive it differently, and I can actually see that people may have different opinions, and it doesn't violate my identity. From our side, as organizers, it wouldn't be hospitable if we had no coffee break between the two panels, where you would be able to communicate to each other more. So thank you very much for your questions. I think I have more proposals here. And this topic is broader than what we can exhaust in 1.5 hours of this panel. So I would like to thank Roman Nazarenko, Roman Solovii, also the Metropolitan of Poltava, Fedir. I felt myself aghast at this discussion, maybe not at a kitchen table, but at with good food and where people exchange ideas. So it was of great value for me. So we will have a coffee break now, and at 11:40, 11:45, we will have the next panel discussion, Hromada as a community, practices for developing resilience and cohesion. And this panel will be moderated by Tatiana Kremenchuk. And I was yesterday, I'm happy I participated yesterday's panel, and we will be happy to see you at this panel now. And now we would like to invite you all to a coffee break.